Great. Well, welcome this evening to the Radnor Township School District Virtual Facilities Committee meeting. We're going to start this evening off with introductions and administrative remarks. First, I'd like to actually introduce the newest member of our team. Avery Barber is a student at Radnor High School, and she is the new student representative to our committee. Avery, do you want to say hi and tell everybody what grade you're in and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Avery Barber. I'm a junior this year, and I'm just really excited for the opportunity to work with everyone. So thank you for having me.
We're happy to have you. We find, especially on this committee, I've seen some really valuable student input, and so you will be a valued member of the team, and I appreciate it. Mr. Dolan, would you like to present administrative remarks this evening?
Yes, also, Avery, thank you and welcome. It's great to finally meet you, and I'm glad to have you here. So also by way of introductions, we have Steve Behrens from Breslin Architects with us again tonight. I think everybody's been tuning in, knows Steve pretty well by now. And also Hugh Cadzo. I think Hugh is on with us or will be joining us from ELA, and James Miller from Fidavia. A few quick remarks to just catch us up on things that are non-COVID related. But I want to start with just thanking our maintenance team, our custodial team, our security team for just all the work that they've done. They've been working diligently, they've been working safely and very creatively to basically help modify our learning environment here so that we're ready to get our students back in our building. So they've just been going, I can't say enough about how the guys have been working, the whole team has been working. But at the same time, they've been keeping up with emergency repairs. We've had a lot of storms this summer, and the spring. We've had some floods. They've also helped as we bring the bus garage back to life, and also just keeping up with preventative maintenance. So great effort all around. Just wanted to have a shout out to them. I mentioned the bus garage, the transportation center. If you recall, a team of contractors got started in early March to get going on the restoration work from the fire from over a year ago. And they're just completing that now. So John Hearn and his team moved in about 2 weeks ago, and we're finishing some finishing touches. But basically we have our transportation team back in the driver's seat, pun intended, and we're just happy to have that done. Fidavia Construction also helped with that project. James is with us tonight. He was not on that project, but same company, and they did a wonderful job working that through. I just want to also underscore that job started really the week that we were shutting down. So they had to, on a construction level, work through protocols, and it was a slow start, but they were safe. And we crawled and then walked and kind of running to the finish line. In restoration notes also, we had fire, and we also had water. So we had the administration ground floor flood out pretty badly. I understand it's not the first time it's happened here, but this happened about, I think it was 7 weeks ago today, because it was a Tuesday. It was that storm Isasis, if I'm saying it correctly. And right away we had our team tackle it, and then we had our insurance group, and also that's AAIC and their group of restorers, Mellon Restoration, literally with us that evening and into the next day. And they've been with us every day to put the ground floor back together again. And we're almost there. We've got about another 2 weeks left. Things were mitigated and safe very quickly. And then it was just a matter of ripping out and repairing. So we'll have our tech department and the Radnor Education Fund were the folks who were probably most displaced and inconvenienced throughout that. We thank them for their patience. We'll have them back online very shortly. And then also, maybe this is a happy note. This was a lot of pandemics and storms and fires and stuff, but we also were approached about a month and a half ago by the Radnor Shade Tree Commission and by the Wayne Business Association. And they're starting a sort of a tree planting program, and the epicenter is right in the center of Wayne. So as they think about places they want to put new shade trees in, they start at Wayne and move out, and that brings us right up to past the firehouse onto our middle school and administration campus. So we're looking at approximately 15, give or take, 15 new trees that'll be planted in October. That's the goal. So next week we are prepping some areas, doing some, we lost some trees over the last few years in and around that area. So anywhere where there is a tree well that is empty, either from a tree that came down or one that was never planted, they've been identified, and then we're gonna prep those areas, do any stump grinding that needs to happen. We'll do that in-house, and then Shade Tree Commission will come in and start planting trees. So I wanna end my administrative remarks on that happy note.
That's a wonderfully happy note.
Look
knew
at
Mrs.
Lydia.
Sullivan would be celebrating, but I think everybody on the committee knows that, that first of all, it's just a wonderfully generous thing for the Wayne Business Association and the Shade Tree Commission to do for us, especially given everything else that's going on. For them to be thinking of us is really kind and above and beyond. But I know just as members of the community, we're appreciative of seeing more trees in town. So that's wonderful. I know we have some public comment this evening. We had I'll let you read it, but we had a comment, some questions that came in about the pool after the community meetings had concluded about the restructuring, the infrastructure project at the high school. And not our typical protocol, but because they came in so far in advance, we were actually able to seek answers to those questions so that we could address them publicly and everyone could hear that update. So with that introduction, Mr. Dolan, do you want to provide this public comment?
Certainly. Bear with me. I'm not going to be as good as Mike Petiti, but he's got to save his voice for later tonight. So this is, so Sarah, basically the email, will read the whole thing. And if we're going to respond to it, Steve is with us, Steve from Breslin, and he and I can probably summarize some feedback on this public comment, but I'll probably wait until we're done, or maybe we take it item by item. Is there a protocol for that?
We don't have a protocol because typically we don't answer public comment in the same meeting. Mr. Batchelor, do you have a preference for how we handle that?
No, I think, and we do sometimes, let's get through public comment. So let's read the public comment.
Let's
and
read it all and then.
Read it all. And if there's other public comments, Michael's with us, Petiti, I don't know if there's any others, this might be the only one. And like we always say for committee meetings, if it is appropriate, something can be commented on after the public comment period is over, certainly we can comment. And in this case, if there's things we want to share, we could do that. So that's fine.
Great. So yeah, just please read the whole thing, I guess.
Okay, sure. So these are questions to the Radnor High School School Board regarding the Natatorium, September 2020, submitted September 20th by parents of the Radnor High School swimmers. It's Melanie and Ron Cosgrove, 135 Browning Lane, Marianne and Jeff Bentley, 252 Conestoga Road, Beth and Glenn Bernarbio, I apologize if I didn't get that right, 227 Pembroke Avenue, Steve and Heather Bevnor, Conley Coonley, 606 Glenmary Road, Maya Bloomfield, 521 South Roberts Road, Susan and Alan Madzitsky, 203 Tower Road, Dave and Kristen Schrader, 842 Lewis Lane, and then Michael Vinnick, 170 Morningside Circle. We want to begin by expressing our gratitude to Superintendent Batchelor, Radnor Township School District Board members, Principal Kevkis, Radnor High School Operations Director, Radnor High School AD Mike Friel, Radnor High School HVAC Plumbing and Electrical staff, and Breslin Architects for the renewed attention to our nearly half-decade-old natatorium. Thank you very much. Our first question relates to natatorium-specific improvement plans outside the Accessibility and Wellness Project. We've heard through informal discussion that there has been much progress made on natatorium planning. We're thrilled about that. One, when would you estimate that the details around the natatorium improvement plan will be made public and potentially open for swim dive community input? The following set of questions relate to the most recent public presentation on August 13th of the ADA Accessibility and Wellness Plan. Questions 2 through 5 referred to the schematic copied below from slide 13, natatorium area main floor plan of the August 13 presentation. I don't have that booted up. Do you feel we need to show that? And if so, I can work on that.
No, I would finish the public comment first.
Okay. Ground level. General question. We were told that the girls' and boys' locker rooms were to be flip-flopped so that the girls' locker room would gain more space. This schematic suggests both locker rooms remain at their same current, in parentheses, small size, and the new girls' locker space even a tiny bit smaller with 629 square feet versus the boys at 639 square feet. 2, can you share current square footage versus proposed new size for each of the boys and girls natatorium locker rooms, as well as provide some details around the proposed locker room enhancements? Team rooms. Would you please clarify the role of the 2 team rooms across from the swim locker rooms? 3A, will the Radnor High School swim dive team have access to them during swim meets so that the teams can be separated and not, for example, have Conestoga and Radnor High School crammed into changing showering areas together, or worse yet, have all Central League champ teams in the same locker room space? And then 3B, and if yes, do the team rooms have showers and toilets? It's unclear from the schematic. Locker room specific questions. Question 4, showers. 4A, what is the proposed number of showers in each of the girls' and boys' locker rooms on the left of the schematic? 4B, will you consider a multi-head shower unit like other Central League pools, Villanova Pool and Suburban Swim Club have? And note there, this would allow many more athletes to shower simultaneously. Currently, there are only a few working showers. Please keep in mind that swimmers and divers must shower to remove chlorine post-swim class, swim practice, and meets. 4C, will there be an accessible friendly shower? And 4D, where's the dry changing area for swimmers and divers? It's unclear from the schematic. Question 5, lockers. 5A, could you clarify the number of lockers that will be available in each of the girls' and boys' locker rooms? How does that compare to the number today? And 5B, will our Radnor High School swim and dive team members get assigned lockers like other varsity sports, at least during season? Assuming so, how will this be left for general student and public and rack access? Question 6 refers to the balcony schematic copied below from slide 13, natatorium area main floor plan of the August 13 presentation. So there's a snapshot of the balcony layout that we've seen. Question 6, balcony seating is already insufficient for bigger dual meets, USA meets, and Central League championships that Radnor High School proudly hosts every year. Often at these meets, there's multiple layers of standing room only, which is not only tight, but a potential fire hazard. Could you please clarify, 1, how many seats will be in the new balcony? 2, how does that compare with the number of seats today? 3, we discussed adding seats at the end of and above the pool deck, but that does not appear to be included in these plans. Would you please clarify if there is an additional seating area? Something to reconsider is the proposed concession area. Can we remove concessions from the balcony where it's currently proposed for August schematic and appears to take up seating space? We could do concessions in the hallway below, as does basketball, and retain more seating in the natatorium balcony that way. Question 7 refers to the window and exit area to the left of the pool, opposite of the balcony and the lockers. 7, glass wall / football field side. How will the football bleacher replacement impact the the exterior wall side of the natatorium, if at all? Currently, we have exit doors and all glass windows, all which are wonderful to have. I'm assuming that we will continue to have access to outside bleachers from the pool and the swimmer seating area, and the windows won't be impacted. These questions are posed to help confirm that the massive taxpayer investment is considering the long-term strategic use and value of the Radnor High School Natatorium. We wonder whether the seemingly non-increased 600 square foot locker space and the potentially reduced balcony seating is in the best interest of Radnor High School long-term, but are hopeful that additional transparency around natatorium planning will help reassure that it is. In addition to doing what makes strategic sense for future generations of natatorium stakeholders, Radnor Township School District should consider the revenue generating opportunities and expanded community benefit of having an ideal natatorium space. Opportunities include expanding community open swim sessions and associated fee revenues with early morning, daytime, and weekend open swim times modeled by other local high school pools, including Lower Merion and Upper Merion. Rentals to community swimming programs such as RAC and USA Master Swimming, rentals to other community groups such as prestigious invitational USA swim meets, Valley Forge USA, Masters Swim Team, other local swim programs such as SKS's spring swimming, etc. We understand that the Radnor Township School District board members and the Radnor High School administrators are fully immersed in COVID-related discussions right now, and we cannot imagine how you have time to manage those discussions along with the facility accessibility and wellness planning happening simultaneously. But as feasible, we urge you to look at the facilities plan in more detail. Perhaps in light of some of these questions, we look forward to your responses. Gratefully, the Radnor High School swimming and diving parents. Okay. All right, that's the comment. Sarah?
No, and just because we have some sticklers in the community, I know that was much longer than 4 minutes, but there were a lot of signatories. So had they all gotten up separately, we would have been fully within their time limits. I know there was a question about assigning locker rooms. That's not within the scope of the infrastructure committee, the steering committee that's been looking at this. If Mr. Behrens or you have answers to some of these, you're welcome to provide answers. I know there were requests for, the one thing I know I can answer, there were requests for additional seating, either above the pool deck or on the pool deck. And I believe that the review from our architects determined that it wasn't feasible to do that within the scope of the project that the board has requested. But I will let him certainly clarify. Mr. Behrens, do you want to weigh in on this? Do you want Mr. Dolan to start?
One of the things, and I don't know if this would be helpful or not, we had some, Steve and I talked and Steve had provided a few answers, not specific to that exact layout of questions that I just read, but maybe in the interest of time, if I read some of his responses, it might capture a lot of that and then leave some of those other details. I know we have a hard stop.
We do have a hard stop and we've got a number of other things we have to get through. I mean, and the shame of it is, and I know timing has been difficult for everyone this summer, but we did have two community meetings scheduled, and because there was so little attendance the first one and no one who indicated they were attending the second one, we didn't even hold the second one. And that would have been the perfect venue for all of these questions and for Mr. Behrens to be there with his, the schematics and to point at various things. So, but if you have answers, we had a preview of some of these questions. If you want to give the answers that we have so far, and we can provide the others perhaps at a future date.
I think that might help that particular group understand the thought that's gone into it so far, and where, Steve and his group have worked hard to do what they can within the scope that we've asked them to perform.
Sure.
So if no objections, I can do that. Mr. Batchelor, did you have any feedback, or I'll just go into that? Okay.
No, I think that's fine. I was just going to say, just monitor your time. So, if you've got some quick updates, or quick responses to that, I think that's great. And then we got to get on to the other agenda items. We could always reach out to that group of parents and set up a separate meeting to talk to them as well.
Good. All right, I'll shoot out a couple of quick responses and then we'll follow up and get on with our agenda. So this one's pertaining to girls and boys locker rooms. So the girls and boys locker rooms have been flipped as part of the project. The confusion probably arises from the fact that the square footages shown on the presentation drawings were not accurate at that time. we've corrected this. The existing and proposed square footages for the 2 locker rooms are as follows. The girls' locker room, existing 547 square feet, proposed 647 square feet. Boys' locker room, existing 540 square feet, proposed 620 square feet. The existing filter room is 325 square feet, which is closer to half the size of the proposed girls' locker room. Okay. Team rooms response. Key justification for the team rooms is the separation of teams during swim meets. However, they are general use and also available for other sports to support the athletic program during all seasons. Shower and toilet facilities were not included in the program or included in the budget for those team rooms. Locker specific questions. Response. The design provides 5 36 by 36, so 5 3-foot by 3-foot shower stalls plus 1 ADA accessible shower stall in each locker room. Okay. There's just a couple more. Drying, changing areas. So the response, based on the feedback that we had received, students were more likely to shower if individual stalls were provided. The design provides 6 shower stalls in each locker room. Both the shower and locker are provided changing space out of the line of sight of the toilets and sink areas and entry passages. Okay. How many lockers in each of the boys and girls locker rooms? The design provides for 44 double tier lockers in each locker room. This is a reduction from the current count of 64 for the girls and 56 for the boys to allow increased shower and toilet space. The proposed count was reviewed and deemed sufficient for the high school PE and team use. There will be 3 ADA designated lockers and an ADA accessible bench in each shower room, in each locker room. Currently, none are accessible. The assessment of the lockers is an administrative decision, but we will all be equipped. They will all be equipped with hasps for padlocks as needed. Seating in the balcony. The overall seating capacity has been reduced in order to provide compliant ADA accessible seating as follows. Existing balcony seating capacity, 192 seats. Proposed balcony seating capacity, 159 seats. 146 bench seats, 2 spare movable seats, and 5 wheelchair spaces, 5 companion seats. That's the breakdown that adds up to the 159 seats. The proposed concession area does not reduce the overall seating capacity. The proposed concession area is carved out of underutilized mechanical room space, which is not available for seating. It's important to note that the concession area will be flexible and movable furniture could be provided. Additional movable seating space if desired. The current practice of placing the table in the stairway egress path is not code compliant. The board approved project program and budget does not include a substantial cost of building additional building to accommodate new balcony seating. And then the last response we had, this is regarding the bleachers and the window wall. The current natatorium windows and exit doors will not be impacted by the bleacher replacement. New bleachers are actually being shifted closer to the field, enlarging the area outside the exit doors and adding accessible viewing positions for the better stadium spectator experience. So those are just some quick responses to those questions. And certainly I just want to share that there was a really good representation of both professionals and then also administrators, from coaching to our AD, to our principal, to our HVAC folks, our maintenance folks, and then several several mechanical, electrical, architectural folks that spent a lot of time in and around the natatorium, asking a lot of questions. And I didn't even mention our natatorium advisor. So we kicked around a lot of areas, and I think that the guys on the Breslin team did a really nice job of really making this space the best it could be without tearing it down and rebuilding it. But we could go further into that. We probably should jump onto our first agenda item, which it's a perfect segue because it's related to the Natatorium.
This is, so can I just give a quick preview to this before Mr. Behrens provides anything? The current plan, a scope of work for the project includes a number of things for the Natatorium, including, you know, an updated HVAC and things like that. But the one piece that it didn't include, because in the initial reviews, it was just too expensive, was a new exhaust system to remove some of the chlorinated air that's in the pool. The initial estimates for the cost of that were close to $500,000, and so it was left out of the scope that was proposed to the board. Upon further review, though, Mr. Behrens has been, and his team and the engineers and the pool company have actually been able to advise us that there's a potential for a different type of exhaust system that would run under the benches along the glass wall facing the bleachers, facing the balcony, I'm sorry, and actually exhaust the air out to the roof. The cost of this, we think it's been estimated to be about $150,000 to $200,000, but it's not currently within the scope. We, on the steering committee, hope and believe that it should fall within the contingency, but because it's outside of the scope, you don't technically count that towards the contingency. We are not at this time, though, asking that the board or the committee consider changing the budget for the plan. What we're asking instead is that the committee authorize us to ask the board to authorize this as an alternative bid, which would allow us to go out to bid, figure out at the time if it fits within our contingency or if we need to change something else, or if we decide it's not a necessary piece of the project. But we want just approval to add it to the alternative plans. I don't know if there was anything more detailed you wanted to prepare or show. I saw there was a schematic. I don't know if that was to explain to people where the vents would sit.
Steve, do
Sure.
you have that?
I can
If not,
share
I can
that.
pull that up. Okay.
No, I have it.
So Chris, if Steve could share, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. That was a great summary of the situation. We have had this item in mind. It was addressed even going back to the feasibility study stage in terms of a concern for the space, the air quality. So that being said, we kept that in the back of our minds, and we're looking for a way to bring that value back into the project. And through a collaborative effort with myself and Breslin Atlantic Aquatic, the pool consultant, as well as Lehigh Valley Engineers, we believe we've found something that is essentially a hybrid solution, but through our own investigation, as well as checking in with some other districts at other natatoriums that have employed this technique, that checking to see if they really did experience an appreciable improvement, so that we could be comfortable that what we're proposing really does have the value. So, and all of that came back positive. And so that's why I'm here to present this evening. And so this is just a drawing sheet that details the modifications that would be made to the natatorium. And yes, as Ms. Dunn presented, the strategy would be to include this in the construction documents as a bid alternate, so that the exact value of it can be discerned from that alternate. And then at that point, the board then has the opportunity to evaluate that cost, and then say yes or no in terms of including it in the eventual construction contract. And at that time, it can be weighed against whatever other alternates we've identified and brought to a value analysis in that way. So, and I will just, again, on account of time, I'll very quickly just present what the impact is, and then I can answer any questions. So this is a view of the natatorium looking out towards the window wall to Prevost Field. And so what you see there are 4 pilasters between the windows, and the bench that runs along the base of the windows between the exit doors, and then all, being interrupted by each of those pilasters. So the concept is, because the HVAC air of the room is moving in that direction, we have a good opportunity to essentially skim the contaminated air off the pool surface of the pool, where, because it's a little bit heavier than air, it tends to collect. And so we can move that air off the surface of the water. It would go across the deck in a sheet flow, essentially, to the toe space below those benches, and then be collected and brought laterally to those pilasters, which would then be built out to accommodate ductwork that would take it to the roof and then be exhausted. So that is a technique that's being used quite frequently. All new pools essentially are being designed now with this system integrated into the gutter around the pool. So again, it's a very common complaint and a very common solution. And in a retrofit situation like we have here, this is a very effective solution. So that then obviously adds the mechanical cost of the ductwork and the exhaust on the roof. And then it also has the architectural component related to the reconstruction of the bench, the expansion of those vertical pilasters. And then, so we do have the opportunity to dress up that wall a little bit in its reconstruction. So the number that was shared included both a mechanical cost associated with the exhaust system, and then an architectural piece associated with concealing those systems within the bench and the pilasters. So hopefully that is clear. I can answer any questions that you have about it at this time.
Steve, I think that was a really good summary, and just sort of big picture wise, if we were building a brand new natatorium, it would have this source capture in it. It's just how we would build a natatorium nowadays. It was not in our scope to tear this down and rebuild it, and yet we don't want to leave it in its existing state from the 1950s if we can help it. So I think that what you came up with, and you didn't go in there with this, it's just you were hearing feedback as we walked through that space several times with a lot of different players, that this would be a clever way to achieve that without rebuilding the whole space. So I just feel it would not be prudent to at least explore it in the construction document, so we had the opportunity to have a real number for it as an alternate. So, thank you for coming up with this. And I know that this schematic that you're showing us tonight was, sort of not in the scope. You've provided that for us. We appreciate that.
And thank you very much, Steve.
Okay.
Do any of the committee members, I know Mrs. Monahan has had a chance to look at this, but does anybody have any questions or need clarification?
I don't have any questions, but I can say I am a swim parent, and air quality has been an issue. I think longstanding, so at times. So I think it is prudent to explore this, and I'm glad to see we're going to get an estimate and then we can make a decision.
Mrs. Solomon?
Yeah, I have a question. Just
Sure.
go back to, the very beginning here. What actually are you doing? You're somehow capturing air through the drain? What? And it
No, good question. That was a very brief explanation, and I'm not a scientist, but what happens is there's a reaction between the chlorine and organic material that's in the pool that comes in via the swimmers, right? And so there's a reaction there that causes that pool smell, that what people think is the chlorine smell, but is actually the results of a reaction. And so that is a heavier than the room air. And so that tends to settle on the surface of the pool. And then obviously it's in the faces of the swimmers as a result, but it does then dissipate into the rest of the space. So what this technique would do, when I mentioned the gutters, I was talking about the typical solution for a new pool, where that exhaust is that negative pressure that's sucking that air off of the pool surface is actually on 4 sides of the pool where the gutter is. In our case, we can't rip apart the entire pool to replace that gutter. So what we're doing is we're counting on the natural movement of the room air that's moving from where it's supplied to the room on the balcony side to the returns at either end of the window wall. So the air's moving in that direction naturally. And then so we're going to, through negative pressure along the bench under the window. So imagine that the bench is sort of floating off the pool deck by about 4 inches. That's the toe space under the bench. And so we're going to create negative pressure by putting an exhaust fan on the roof that sucks at the air through those ducts and will draw that air off the pool surface across the deck into those ducts and then out. Does that help?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
So talk about this exhaust fan, because the natatorium's really noisy. Will this be a very loud exhaust fan? Like I'm trying to picture, is it external? What?
Yes, it is external. It would be placed on the roof. And it would be installed like other rooftop equipment, where it has soft connections that allow for the isolation of the sound and any vibrations that it would create. And so, no, it's not going to be something that, it's not like your bathroom fan where you're going to turn it on and you hear it. This is exterior. Was that the only question, or was there another one in there? I'm sorry.
Oh, that was it.
Okay,
No,
great.
No, that was helpful, because I was imagining this huge industrial exhaust fan in the ceiling of the natatorium, and
Right.
so
it's-
that, yeah,
yeah.
very helpful.
The
It's
air's
not going to
moving
be.
exclusively through duct. So what you'll see is a much nicer window wall with tile and a new bench. You won't see any sort of duct work or anything like that.
So I think it is really important to have, purified air quality. So I think 150,000, but I at one point had heard 500,000 for this. So if we can keep it at 150,000, I think.
Now, the 500,000, Lydia, was I think an estimate for what it might have cost to do other remedies, and that's why they went and proactively looked for some other solution
Yeah.
for us.
All right, good. This sounds like a good compromise.
Great. So we got a couple more things to get through in 20 minutes. So I have a record to keep here. I'm sorry though, Mrs. Monahan, did you have any other questions on this one? Yeah, okay. Mr. Dolan, do you want to explain the professional services agreement? This also relates to the wellness infrastructure project.
Yeah, so the professional services agreement is a required portion of basically the land development permit. So when you go to apply for the land development permit, we have access to, or we have had access to, the professionals that Radnor Township uses, through their building department, and they pay for those professional services through an open escrow account. So basically, the professional services agreement requires us to put money into escrow, and then as they're reviewing our plans and they're having their engineers, their legal teams review our plans and give us feedback, they're drawing from that open account as we go through that process. Typically, you would go in for a permit, pay the permit fee, and then also open up this professional services agreement. We were offered the ability to have the professional services agreement a little bit earlier this summer. They do that in certain cases with projects. Villanova University has done that with Radnor, so that we can have early access with them, so that we don't head down the wrong path and incur a lot of professional fees on our side that might be going in the wrong direction. So ideally, I would have had this in front of the board last month. Our focus was elsewhere. Radnor Township did allow us access to them for feedback on all of this. So we've kind of been taking advantage of this agreement without it being written in stone yet. But because it is an agreement between the township and the district, it does need to go in front of the board for approval. I don't know if I should get into all the details of it. It is
I don't
Michael
think the
Christofko has
details-
reviewed it.
Yeah, I don't think the details are necessary. I mean, everyone had an opportunity to look at the agreement. I think what I wanted to make sure people focus on is this isn't a request for more money. These are dollars that are approved as part of the existing project. The difference here is that the township has made an accommodation to us to have access to the experts they use, but they pay those experts presumably when the services are rendered. And so they've essentially been floating this money for the district by paying by letting us use their advisors without us paying in advance. So what they've asked us to do is finally honor the kind of relationship we intended to set up, which was put money in escrow so they can draw it down only as they pay their advisors, which is money we would have had to pay anyway. And then when the relationship is over, if there's money left in the escrow, that will come back to us. They're not going to take it and keep things that aren't theirs. It's just a matter of making sure that the money is there for the township to cover their bills when it's our liability. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And Sarah, that's accurate.
Sorry,
That's
I just wanted
accurate.
to see if people had questions. Lydia, you're okay with that? Okay. So we'll move that to the board agenda if that's okay with everybody. Feasibility study, Mr. Dolan.
Okay. Well, I've also asked
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry, go ahead.
Barnes. I've also asked Mr. Barnes to be with us tonight just to give an update, since the same group is working on our feasibility study. And, as we've kind of admitted that we've got a lot going on over the summer, I wanted Steve to have an opportunity to just let us know where we're at and where we need to go next with it. In light of, our efforts to get our schools ready, that's our primary focus, and get reopened here.
Great, sure. Brief update is we have been diligently working on the assessments and the reviewing the capacities of the buildings. So our team was able to get access to each of the school buildings, and you got a lot of help from the principals and the staff in the buildings. So that was great. We're very appreciative of that. I know they had a lot of other things going on. And so we are to the point now where we have completed essentially the first half of the study. And literally it usually takes the form of 2 volumes. One is the assessments, the capacity analysis, and the capital improvement plans for each building. And then volume 2 often is the construction options, the analysis of the solutions, with if any construction projects are identified, the cost estimate, the phasing, the schedule, and the resulting capacity on the buildings as a result, and then how those construction projects would address the enrollment projections that the district has, as well as the capital needs of the buildings and the educational program for the next 10 years or so. So that's where we stand with that volume 1 wrapping up. And so the next step for us and the district would be to have a meeting to review that, to bring you all up to speed as to what our findings were, and then have a discussion, have an exchange of ideas on that with whomever you wish in terms of stakeholders, and then get an initial read on where we should be taking this in terms of construction options, and then sort of kick off that next phase. And so that's where we stand. And we recognize that there's a lot of other things going on at the district. You've been amazing in keeping all of the infrastructure project going with all of its implications. And so at the pleasure of the district and the capacity of the district, we're ready to have those meetings and move into the next phase.
So I guess the question for Mr. Dolan and Mr. Batchelor is, I know this is a district goals, which means it's one of our top priorities for the year, but I know we set those before 2020 blew up in our faces. And I guess, I know this is actually crucial to a lot of what you do, Mr. Dolan, and it's crucial to the planning for the district, but I don't want to overtax. I think we're all very, very mindful of how busy the administration is at all levels. Do you have a sense of what you think the time frame should be for moving into phase 2? I know we're in great hands with Mr. Behrens. His team has done a wonderful job for us so far, but I do know, we need to think about planning.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's not a week goes by where I wouldn't love to have had this project already, this report already sitting on the side table to refer to and help plan and make decisions. So I think it is really important that it continues, but at the same time, we had hoped to bring this volume 1 to the board this month, and for obvious reasons, it's not a great time to do that. So I also think that we need to talk about should there be a steering committee to take it into volume 2, and then, are we so taxed at least this month that, it's not a great time to put a steering committee together for that. But I feel like we need this month to, as our meeting starts in 12 minutes, to make some big decisions about the students and when they're going to be back in our rooms, to just maybe take the rest of this month and coming into our next facilities meeting to think about that, how we want to handle that, and then come up with recommendations for how to step into volume 2. I think that's my recommendation at this point. I'm not saying it should stop, but maybe just pause this month. And, Steve has generated a lot. So there's a lot that we need to look at. It's just, I don't want to dump it and have it sit. I want to have a receptive group that's established and identified that can then take that great information and move forward with it.
And we talked about at the beginning, when we looked at this plan, we talked about forming a steering committee. And I think we're at that phase. I think we're at that phase to start to look at what type of steering committee we want to put together. Like the accessibility and wellness, this is critical. And though we've been dealing with COVID and getting our kids back in, there have been, critical aspects of the district that have moved forward and need to move forward. And this is one of those that needs to, continue to move forward. So I think we can look at, in the next few weeks, putting together, a plan and to share with the board on how do we move forward to take this to the next step, to continue the work with Steve and his team. And we're very appreciative of all the work they have done. And I'm very appreciative of the administrative team and Mr. Dolan and operations, because they did keep this going. They set up the meetings, the principals made the times, our operations team made the time, even while they're busy, hanging plexiglass and doing other things. We kept this moving forward because this isn't been just about the immediate needs of the district. This is about setting a solid foundation and groundwork for the long-term planning for us as a district. And so we're going to continue moving forward with it. We'll look at the timing for a steering committee, and we can talk more in the coming weeks on how we move forward.
Okay, great. And I really do appreciate that this is no small effort on the administration's part, but it is really important for the long-term health of the buildings and the district. So I I'm glad to hear it's going to be moving forward. I didn't want to be the one who cracked the whip and said, you have to do this. But I do think, I think it's a really meaningful and important project. Great. So we'll be seeing more of you, Mr. Behrens. Did anybody else have any questions about the feasibility study? Okay. Any new business? Any public comment that's come in during the meeting? Great, we're going to adjourn 10 minutes early. We will post our scheduled meeting for next month. I don't know that we have the schedule finalized. There's a lot up in the air. So, but thank you again to the facilities team for all your work getting the buildings ready for students. This is a special year to have to do that. So we really appreciate all the effort. Have a good night.
Thank you all. Good evening.